Children of Israel, it dawned on me that this story is less about thunderous miracles of the moment, and more about their discovering how to live off the land that God had provided. It is the same story that my brothers and I are learning as we learn to work together, as we develop a plan for my mother's long-term care when my father is unable to be restored to full vigor. 2 weeks ago, we heard the story of the molten image, how fear set into the community of the Israelites while Moses was up on the mountain engulfed in the cloud of God. They were leaderless. They were afraid. And they lost faith. They assumed the worst and resorted to the only thing they knew how to do. They collected their jewelry. They melted down. And they created an idol to worship, to appease in hopes of finding their way out of the wilderness. In today's world, we're a little more sophisticated than that. No longer do we resort to blood sacrifices or paying homage to idols in order to influence the will of God. And yet, even in this modern world, we still struggle to understand the words of Isaiah. God's ways are not our ways, nor are our ways God's ways. Or the words of the Lord's Prayer, Thy will be done, not our will be done. Last Tuesday night, when I knew that my father was going to be brought into emergency surgery to finally clean out the infection, knowing that the surgeons were not crazy about performing the surgery because he was not a good surgical risk, I struggled with the God that I was going to pray to. It wasn't easy to pray to the God that I know is true, because that God wasn't offering comfort at the moment. Instead, I wanted to pray to the false God that was comforting. The God that I like to refer to as the God of the cosmic Santa Claus. The one that you simply read off your list of wishes, and then magically, like Christmas morning, they all appear and are taken care of. I struggled with that false God in the same way the Israelites struggled with the false God they created. And my prayers went from, God, please see my father through this surgery, to your will be done, whether I like it or not, to help me to accept whatever the outcome, to finally, I have placed my father into your hands. All will be good. As Audrey Lunson reminded me on Tuesday afternoon, all would be good. No matter what, my father would live, whether on this earth or in the heavenly kingdom with our Creator. As I spent time reflecting on journey, on my personal journey, I've also become aware of the fact that congregations live in the midst of the journey through the wilderness as well. When I arrived here just over 8 years ago, the search committee made it clear to me that it was St. Luke's desire to become a program-sized parish somehow becoming program-sized is the promised land of parish development. And to that end, there are countless church organizations that are producing programs that, if you happen to work with, is guaranteed to grow your parish. And it seems as if these programs, whether they are from the Alban Institute, a result of the Cursillo movement, part of Alpha, or even Via Media, they've somehow become our molten images of life, the false gods of parish mission. And throughout these years together, we've experienced the resistance to the changes the world is forcing on us. As many of us still long for the days when churches were bursting at the seams. Sunday school space was of a premium. And the basic mission of the church was, if you build it, they will come. Those days, like Israel's days in Egypt, are long gone. And now we are in the journey of learning how to fulfill our mission in new and different ways. Again, this is the same way Israel learned to feed itself, by collecting the manna that fell to the ground each night and seeking water from arid rocks. Now, 8 years later, I've learned a thing or two about St. Luke's Church. What I've learned from each and every one of you, from our vestry and from every new member, is we really don't want to be a program-sized parish. Because what we value at our core is intimacy, accessibility. And even though we are called to bring all people to God's healing and grace, it most likely isn't through church program, but individual relationship. And the joy of being part of a small Christian community of faith. The challenge, however, that we face today is not how do we continue growing as we seek the promised land of being a program parish, but how will we sustain our mission now that we have found the land we seek? And how will we learn to trust that no matter what the challenges are that God puts before us, God will ultimately provide what we need. This morning, the wilderness saga comes to an end as Moses once again stands up atop a mountain and is given a glimpse by God into that land of promise. And as we also heard this morning, it is not Moses who leads his people into that place that they have been searching for those past 40 years, but it will be Joshua. And Joshua will ultimately lead them across the Jordan to Jericho and in throughout that land that God has given them. Now, as I reflect over the entire saga, I realize that the point of the story is not about the destination, but about the journey. It's not about the fact that the promised land was always within a day or two's journey away. But it's about the fact that, like you and me, our sagas in life are never about getting from point A to point B, but about the journey from our own bondage into our own wilderness, and the process of learning to trust and accepting of God's healing embrace in each of our lives. Amen.